Thank you so much for tuning into my show, William Wallace for America. Today's episode is once again talking about the importance of watching what's happening in your state legislatures to be able to focus on things that you can do to have more of an impact in your state. I always tell people the federal government has pierced the 10th Amendment veil with programs and money and things that they are doing to destroy not only policies on a state level, but bring more power back to DC. The Pelican Institute, which you'll see a lot of interviews I've been doing in the last few days and few weeks with them, is they work within Louisiana, but they work with other organizations in other states to be able to not only look at those policies as what they can do in Louisiana, but work with other organizations in other states to see how they can work together, because the more states that adopt similar policies that work, the better our communities and our country is without the federal government. Erin Bendily is working on legislative issues in Louisiana. How are you today, Erin? Thank you so much for joining me.
Thanks for having me, William. Great to be back with you.
Well, I know that you are working on a lot of things in our state legislatively. I'm going to have you talk about those things, and I'm going to be giving people an overview, but also you're going to tell us about what the Gator program is. I know people in Louisiana are very familiar with it. They're very familiar with it when it got funded and when it didn't get funded and the arguments, but other states maybe need to adopt a Gator program. But let's start with the Gator program. It's one thing we can get off the plate, and then we'll go to the legislative issues. Let's talk about that for a second.
Sure. So we're really excited about the Gator program. For folks that are unfamiliar with it, it stands for Giving All True Opportunity to Rise. And when we talk about all, we're mainly talking about our children and their families across our state. We were very happy to see in this past election cycle a number of individuals that were running for the state legislature and running for governor that ran on a platform of change and opportunity for our state's children, knowing that we are in a state that still has a lot of challenges when it comes to education. We know that one school, one size fits all, does not always meet the needs of all children. Whether they are in an A-rated public school or an F-rated public school or somewhere in between, kids are different. They have different learning needs and strengths. So finding that environment that works best for their needs is critical. So that's what the Gator program is all about. It is what you call an education savings account program. It's not a voucher program, contrary to what you might have heard or read, and I'll tell you what the difference is. The difference is that an ESA program, and there are about 18 across the country, is a program designed to give families more flexibility than they have ever had before. It's no longer a choice of a government-run public school versus a private school, although those might be options that work for children. And a lot of families are still going to choose those options, and that's fine. But in 2026, we have a lot of other ways that kids can learn and get access to supports and services and courses and materials and technology, certainly, that can help and enhance their learning and provide academic interventions sometimes if they're struggling. And so all of these things, individual courses, career and technical education, foreign languages, speech therapy, access to technology, all of these things are available in a marketplace, kind of like you go shopping on Amazon. There is a marketplace set up for the LA Gator program, and students who qualify and receive an award will be able to go into that marketplace, and they can choose a school that they want to use to pay tuition and fees if that's their choice, or if they want to do more of a home-based program, a customized program, what I call a la carte. They can actually go in and choose individual courses in English, math, science, social studies. They can then choose electives and enrichment courses, dual enrollment, career training. And then if they need access to some curriculum materials, maybe a laptop to support their learning, notebooks, things like that, then those things are in the marketplace as well. So when you talk about putting power back in the hands of families like never before, this is it. We're really excited about it. This is what our children deserve. Now it comes down to making sure that we are actually putting action behind the legislation that was passed, making sure that the thousands of families that remain on a wait list for this program right now actually see this as reality for their children.
It sounds to me like the Gator program, when you say there's a lot of people on the waiting list, so it is basically a fund that helps people, that helps families. Well, let me say it this way: it sounds like more of a tool that a family that's aware of it can say, "Hey, I can use this tool to make the decision on where the best place for me to send my child is," because a family member, a parent, knows a child better than the government does. But I'm kind of giving an overall view of what I've gotten out of this. So does the Gator program work with the ESAs? Are those independent of the Gator program? But does the Gator program work with organizations like, say, ACE, the ones that have scholarship programs? And if so, this sounds like maybe near the end of the school year, we could actually, you and I, do a more of a focused interview on the Gator program, ESAs, programs like ACE, and really show people all of the pardon the word they use, arsenal, to show all the tools. We'll say the toolbox. We'll say the toolbox sounds better than arsenal. Show parents the toolbox that's available to them to not only fund their children's educations, but be able to make the choice that's best for their children. Is that kind of what I'm saying, that the Gator program is the overall governing body, or how do they work with ACE? How do they work with ESAs? Can you explain that for a second?
Sure. So the Gator program is the ESA program.
Okay.
But you're right. It works in a very complementary way with other school choice programs that we've had in our state for a while. So you mentioned ACE. ACE is one of, I think it's 4 total school tuition or scholarship tuition organizations. These are organizations that go out and raise money from private contributors and philanthropists, and a lot of businesses across the state that want to donate money into a fund that can grant scholarships to children in need and their families to get them into a school that meets their needs. Those programs have been in effect for probably a decade or longer in our state. They've done some amazing work. They've served thousands of children across our state. Those programs are continuing, but certainly they're limited. They only raise a certain amount. They can only award so many scholarships. So the Gator program really serves to enhance those options because those programs can't serve everyone. So the Gator program offers a chance to serve more individuals, but also to give them more flexible options. Again, it's not just a program that you can use to pay private school tuition. As we discussed, you can use it on a number of other courses and services and learning materials. Now, the way that they can work together, and this is really important, there was a piece of legislation passed just last year that allows the tax credit scholarships like those granted by ACE to be stacked on top of the Gator scholarship. And why that's important is because the Gator scholarship is a certain finite amount of money. In some cases, it may not be enough to cover 100% of the cost of tuition and fees for a family to go or to have their children go to their desired school. So what do you do if you have a Gator award that maybe pays for 75% of your tuition and fee bill, but you don't have the money out of pocket to make up the remainder? Is that opportunity just lost for your child? Well, the legislature really thought through this scenario last year and said, well, wait a minute.
Mhm.
We have this tax credit scholarship. What if that scholarship could be made available to plug in the difference, to make sure that families have access, particularly low-income families have access to the funds that they need to make sure that this is not a missed opportunity for their children. So that's one important way that 2 programs, LA Gator and the tax credit scholarships, can work together.
I love it. So let's and we're gonna start wrapping up on the Gator program. But when you said it's not a voucher program, where does the your dollar follows the child concept or program or type of program fit into LA Gator and the other scholarship programs?
Well, you said it. It's meant to be a program where tax dollars can follow the child,
Is it
not to where
independent of the
the
Gator program?
No, I'm talking
Okay,
about
okay,
the Gator
okay,
program,
okay,
and this
okay.
is very important. Governor Landry, when he first announced this program at the beginning of his administration and ultimately called on the legislature to pass it, he used these words. He talked about expanding educational opportunities and allowing dollars to follow the child. And what he meant by that is that it shouldn't be the government saying, well, we're going to fund one particular school system and then based on your zip code or your address, tell you where to send your child. We actually need to flip that. Families need to be able to direct those dollars that would serve their children anyway, not just where the government thinks they should go, but where families who know their children
Mhm.
better than anyone else, where they believe they can best be served. So this is all about, again, putting parents in the driver's seat to make sure that if they think a neighborhood public school is where their child can best be served, that's fine. There's a process for that. But if they feel it's somewhere else, if they believe their child can best be served in a private school or a customized home-based setting, there's an avenue for that too, and this allows for that to happen. The mechanics of this are very important because the state legislature basically makes a decision of funding a child over here in the public school system or funding the child on the other side through the Gator program. To a large extent, it's a wash. The government has said we value public education anyway. This is just a matter of directing those funds to where families believe their kids can best be served. And where we stand right now is making sure that just as easy as it is to fund children going to public schools, that we have that same ease of funding and commitment to the Gator program. And this has been a hot topic lately. We have only funded about 700 students out of 35,000 eligible students that have applied for this program. So we have
Wow.
thousands of students and their families on a wait list right now. It's imperative that the legislature prioritize funding for this program to the same level that we fund and commit to those children if they were enrolled in a government-run school.
Is the reason it's not being funded, is it political or is it money?
I think
Or
we're
can you get
still we're still working through those questions that lawmakers may have. Certainly, we would make the case that this should not be so difficult. We know the dollars are there. It's just a matter of really prioritizing opportunities for families. We're not here to, certainly rehash the entire bill. I think the legislature and the governor spoke loudly and clearly 2 years ago when they passed this program. This is about delivering on that promise. It's not enough to just pass a law and pat ourselves on the back and say we did something great. Now we have to put action behind that because this is about changing children's lives and giving them opportunity and giving our state the best opportunity for success.
I love the way this sounds. It sounds like an opportunity for parents who know their children deserves better or give them an opportunity to get out of maybe a failing school into a school that is a little bit more educational based, to be able to really help children, give good opportunities to improve their lives. One last question about Gator. How does a parent find out about it? How does a parent say, "Hey, wait, this sounds like something I'd be interested in. I want to find out more. I want to get on that waiting list or I want to be involved." How do they do that?
Yeah, the best way is to go to the Department of Education's website, the Louisiana Department of Education. It's very easy to just, put that in your search bar. When you go to that main page, you will see it displayed there. Now, there is an application cycle. I don't believe it's opened yet for this coming school year, but it should be opening very soon. I believe last year they opened it March 1st. So look for that. That application period is coming soon. And don't think just because maybe you didn't get funded last year that you shouldn't apply. This is your opportunity to demonstrate in a real way through a real application what you need to support your child. And the legislature needs to not only hear that from you, they need to see it show up in the number of applications that are received.
I like how you're saying that. Before I start asking you about legislation questions, and legislative questions, I always tell people who don't, because I think our communities don't vote. I mean, you have less than 10% voter turnout in a lot of elections where there's taxes on there and people aren't as involved as they used to be. I tell people the reason it's important to vote is, even if you think your vote doesn't matter, when more people turn out to vote, politicians start paying attention.
That's
Now
right.
when there's 10% turnout, they go, oh, they don't care about taxes. But when there's 90% turnout, they go, oh, wow, people care. So, like the Gator program, for the parents that say, well, there's already a waiting list of thousands, I'm not going to jump on that. If parents start getting involved and doubling that number on the waiting list, some politicians are going to go, wait a minute, this issue, education, is more important to people than we realized. And then they might get off they might stop kicking the can down the road and get off their duffs and do something to get it funded. Erin, what other things are you working on, or what are you working on in in this next legislative session that's coming up in Louisiana? But more importantly, let's prioritize that, and things that you're working on in Louisiana that may have been done in other states or is being worked on in other states that you're connecting here in Louisiana. Can we talk about those first?
Sure. Well, we talked a little bit about money, so let's just stay in that category for a
I love
minute.
it.
We know just a couple of years ago, not only did the legislature take a stand for educational choice, they also took a stand when it comes to providing relief for taxpayers. And they did that in a special session to lower taxes and to really do away with some of our state's most punishing taxes on businesses, on job creators across our state. And this is so important because it gets to the heart of people being able to thrive right here in Louisiana. We know that for years we have been losing people to other states. We have been losing more people than we have had coming in. People have left in search of opportunity. I mean, we actually got to a point where we were calling it Louisiana's unfortunate legacy of leaving, because everyone has a story about having a family member or a friend leave and search for opportunity elsewhere. We need to reverse that. And you mentioned other states. We know that other states are actually taking steps to attract business, to attract families, not only because they have great educational opportunities, but because they have jobs and they have a strong, lean, coherent tax system. Why is that important? That attracts businesses. That attracts people who want to keep more of their hard-earned money and
Mm-hmm.
their paycheck and not sending it to the government. And so our legislature, with the support of our governor, took steps 2 years ago to do away with some of these most punishing business taxes, but they also took steps to flatten, to make more fair, and importantly, to reduce our personal income tax down to 3%, which is a lot more competitive. But at the same time, we're doing this, as you mentioned, we've got to pay attention to what's going on around us and in other states. Mississippi, just next door, actually has a slightly higher income tax rate than we do, but they are getting a lot of attention, a lot of publicity, and a lot of economic development interest. You know why? Because they didn't just stop there. They said, we are actually going to put into effect a formal plan to get to zero. We're going to totally eliminate the personal income tax. And so other states are taking similar measures. The governor came out just about a month ago, sent a letter to the Speaker of the House and the President of the State Senate saying we need to keep our foot on the gas. We need to do more as well. We have to stay in the game. We have to continue being competitive economically. So we have to do more. It's not enough that we did a few things 2 years ago. This is something that we have to stay at it. We have to stay competitive. So this is going to be something that we are looking forward to seeing our governor and our legislature take even more steps to be more competitive, to maybe bring that 3% individual income tax level down to 2.5%. But again, not stopping there, putting a calendar into effect or some sort of trigger system in place to say we have a plan to ultimately get to zero, because that's what's really economically competitive right now. But that begs another question of how. How do we do that when at the
Yeah,
same time
where's
we
the money
know
come from?
exactly, exactly. In order to do that, you have to be fiscally responsible. You can't continue to spend, 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 and then think that you are going to reduce state revenues and that those books are going to balance. We know that that doesn't work. Just like in our own budgets, we can't say we're going to save money, but we continue spending on things that we really can't afford. The government has got to live within its means. We have to rein in runaway spending. And so
Mhm.
we believe that a way to do that, looking at what some other states have done, is to really put a solid expenditure limit into place. What does that mean? It's basically a formula and a rule that the legislature would adopt to say we can't spend more than what our state can afford, particularly what our taxpayers can afford. We believe that that rule should be based on some actual indicators, things like our population growth, things like inflation. We shouldn't be growing our government faster than our population is growing. We
Mhm.
also need to keep things tied to inflation. We believe if we do those things, we will set a more responsible path forward to allow this tax relief to happen.
I'm actually loving hearing not only the plan to have zero taxes, but what I like even more is that you all have an oversight on reining in government spending. You're tying the two together. You're not just saying, okay, we're gonna have to cut taxes to zero. You all figure it out. You're saying, look, if you can get here, we're actually going to work with you on lowering spending. Have you all worked with other organizations similar to the Pelican Institute in other states on what they're doing to actually reduce spending, or is there something that is there some sort of a partnership that you all can offer on policy wise with government to help them figure out how to reduce spending? Is there something tied to that?
Absolutely. And I'll say this is not just, that we think this, is a good idea or, we should hit these two things at once, spending and tax revenue. It's actually a necessity. It doesn't work to have tax reform and tax relief without spending restraint. It just doesn't work. We have seen that in other states. That's a recipe for disaster. So these are essential things that have to go together. There is a group like the Pelican Institute in every other state. So we have a great network with them to be able to find out what other states have done. Where can we learn what has gone well? What, good ideas can we borrow? We're certainly never against borrowing great ideas and great solutions and bringing them home. But it also gives us an opportunity to interact with groups like ours that have a lot of data, a lot of just ability to analyze data and model these things, dynamic scoring of things, for example, for our fiscal notes for our legislature, working with other national organizations that focus on taxes, organizations like Americans for Tax Reform, the Buckeye Institute, others that have done this all over the country. We're able to partner with them to say, tell us which states are most competitive, how have they addressed spending, how have they delivered meaningful tax reform, and how can you help us really bring that home to something that works for Louisiana. So we're really excited that a lot of that homework has been done. It was done really in time for the special session a few years ago. Now it's just time to really enter into a second phase of that work and set us on a permanent path to get this done.
I know this is part of a much bigger answer, a much bigger conversation, but is there a simplistic way to our simplistic answer to this question? If you're cutting, if we're getting down to zero on income tax, and of course, I know reducing spending is big, but when you can reduce spending, the government still needs money to supply it, right? And supply its needs. What are a couple or a few of the biggest ways that government can replace that tax income with other forms of income that you all might be working on at the Pelican Institute in Louisiana?
Well, I think it really starts with a thorough analysis of where the dollars are going right now. We were very encouraged to see Governor Landry's fiscal responsibility program, which to many people was known as LA Doge, really do some incredible work over the last year. And they were able to realize about $1 billion in savings through efficiencies
Wow.
and streamlining, canceling contracts that weren't needed anymore. I read one story that they found, goodness, I think it was $500,000 in savings just by stopping agencies from mailing through the U.S. Postal Service mail between agencies that are located in the same state office building. Um, so, I mean,
Please.
it's hard to argue that our system actually needs more revenue when we have such inefficiencies that we need to be uncovering to figure out how we can better use our tax dollars, the people's money to do the work that needs to be done, those essential services that need to be done in government. So that's a big part of it, is just being better stewards of taxpayer dollars.
Mhm.
Next, I think we can get into where are we spending dollars that really aren't what we would call essential priorities of government. Certainly, there are certain vital services that we expect from our government, but then there are other things, like when it comes to the state funding nonprofit organizations or groups that are called NGOs, non-governmental organizations. Should the state be in the business of sponsoring fairs and sponsoring renovations to private facilities, beautification projects, splash pads across the state? Should the state be in the business of funding local government? That's a big one. Our state has a long history of having this system where we take revenue, and then we expect locals to actually come to Baton Rouge and compete through the political system to get certain projects funded back home. What again if we were to flip that and say, rather than the state taking that revenue to begin with and operating this political system, why don't we just let the locals raise the revenue and decide their own priorities and not have to
Yeah.
come and beg for it back in Baton Rouge? That
Right.
would allow us to have a very clear delineation between state priorities and local priorities, get us out of the business of spending so much money on favored local projects. And certainly there may be times where that's warranted, where especially small rural communities actually may need the support from the state for critical infrastructure. We know that that happens sometimes, but there's plenty of opportunity for just better decision making, more fiscal responsibility before we even get to the point where we talk about needing to raise revenues.
This is quite amazing. What I'm hearing is that there's such a spending problem in Louisiana. There's such a lack of good stewardship of our money in Louisiana that Louisiana doesn't have to do much to get more income. It's just if it just reduces some of this bad spending practices, that we don't need more revenue. We don't need we don't need personal income tax. There's probably enough sales tax in there to cover the operations. We just never knew it because there was such a spending problem. Is it that easy of a calculation?
I think that's a large part of it. Again, not saying that we won't ever get to the day where we need to have more conversations on the revenue side, but for now, everything that we're seeing shows that revenues in our state are actually pretty plentiful. We have a lot of work to do to be better stewards of those dollars and show taxpayers that we're using those dollars well to really drive priorities in the services that they want to receive.
I know you mentioned in the beginning of this answer that you all were working with the state on being good stewards of our money. Is there any other legislation around that forces the government on spending? I know you talked about inflation and population before, but is there anything else that you didn't get to yet?
Well, that bill in particular, it's called the government growth limit. That's not just an idea. I want to also point out that the legislature twice has advanced that legislation. It was actually part of a bill that was wrapped up in the constitutional amendment, the one that failed last year, that did a lot of different things.
Yeah,
And
too many
obviously,
things.
And that might have been one reason why it ultimately didn't pass, is because there were a lot of pieces to that I think a lot of
Right.
people didn't understand. But buried within that was this government growth limit. It also came back in the form of a bill last session that passed the House, and ultimately did not advance on the Senate side. So we are very hopeful that lawmakers will see fit to bring that back this year and go ahead and institute that. I think that is just a level of restraint that we have been missing for a long time. So that will be a really good starting point. At the same time that happens, again, we hope to see legislation, and we believe we will, to bring down that maximum income tax bracket. We've been hearing possibly down as low as 2.5%. Again, coupled with some sort of schedule or trigger-based mechanism to ultimately get us down to zero over time. So those are two pieces of legislation. I don't know if there'll be one bill, two bills, whatever it is. We're really looking forward to engaging on that.
So when I asked you earlier about legislation that you are working on in Louisiana that reflects other states, that I got answers number one and number two here. Sounds like, what would be the third piece of legislation that you think is most critical in this upcoming session? And I know this is not a fiscal session coming up, but still, in all, fiscal issues get blended in every legislative session. But what's number three in your opinion you all are working on for this next one?
You're right. This is an open session. Lawmakers can really file bills on a number of different issues and an unlimited number of bills. So it's going to be a big year. You know how much we work on regulatory reform issues. And Louisiana is a state that for years has struggled with a really punishing regulatory environment. We talked about our tax structure. We talked about lack of educational opportunities. The other thing that we know is just killing business opportunity and jobs is our regulatory environment. We have had for many years just the unfortunate reputation of being one of the most highly regulated states in our country. And that happens at a number of levels. That happens in state law, that happens in regulations that are adopted by agencies. It also happens by boards and commissions across our state. A lot of people don't realize there are hundreds of boards and commissions that operate across state government. Some have been in effect for many years, some are newer. Many of them adopt regulations that ultimately affect people's livelihoods and their businesses. Some of them pass fees that they charge, fees and fines. And so we always look forward to an annual report that the legislative auditor does that gives an update on all of these boards and commissions. Where are we in terms of the number of them that are out there operating? How many of them are still there on the books, but maybe they have been inactive for many years? Which ones really just aren't needed anymore? Are there some that maybe are operating outside of their scope and authority? These are very important questions to be asked. And so we're encouraged that, once again, there's a list of boards and commissions that I think are available for lawmakers to make some changes here, to maybe repeal some of these boards and commissions that are no longer needed. They've been enacted for some time. Maybe, they're just not needed anymore. We also believe that there should be more transparency in how these rulemaking bodies operate. A lot of times they operate all over the state in different buildings that can be a little hard for the public to really understand what's going on. We think, especially in this day and age where everybody has one of these, it should be very easy to live stream these meetings and to make sure that voters know where these meetings are taking place. Wherever they are, they should be able to know what's on the agenda, what's being voted on, how can they see, the materials. So we really hope that the legislature will work with us and others to provide some greater transparency and accountability to these bodies that are government bodies. They are passing rules and regulations. They are enacting fees. This really gets to the heart of Louisiana's regulatory environment. And if we can be a little more proactive and responsive, we can hopefully be able to bring some of this overregulation back to where we right-size government and really operate with limited government in the state of Louisiana.
So what I like that I've heard so far, answers 1 and 2, you're creating an environment in Louisiana of not only lower personal income taxes, but making it less expensive for a business to do business in Louisiana, as reflected on the legislative process or what's in Louisiana law or what's in Louisiana's bureaucratic system. But this answer, when you talk about the good old boy clubs that are in Louisiana and the amount of good old boy clubs and the rules and regulations within the good old boys clubs that are not regulated by state law, those good old boy clubs and their rules and regulations for their private clubs also affect businesses coming to Louisiana. I'm leading up to a question here. So I guess another business that might look to come in and do business in Louisiana might say, "Hey, we're not bringing our beauty salon business." That's just one I know off the top of my head, into Louisiana, because you all got all these boards and commissions that regulate whether somebody can braid hair. I know you all deregulated a lot of this stuff already, but I'm just kind of giving an example in past tense, we'll say. So, but what you all are looking at now is how many of these boards and commissions you were not able to deregulate or break up in years past, and you're still working on it to be able to further create an environment of making it business friendly in Louisiana, so other businesses can come in here and say, "Hey, not only do we not have to deal with Louisiana regulation, we don't have to deal with the good old boy club and the good old boy regulations that you, if you're not born into that family, you don't get in." Am I right, or am I wrong here?
No, you're absolutely right. And, this is certainly not to say that we should not have those functions in government. If there are boards and commissions and issue and licensing entities, we know some of that is necessary to protect consumers. That's really why they were established by the legislature in the first place. They are supposed to serve a legitimate purpose when it comes to protecting the health, safety, and welfare of consumers. The problem is we know that too many times they go way above and beyond that. And a lot of the individuals that are on these boards often work in these areas, and they are current people in those industries, and they approach their jobs on these boards to use that as a way to not allow others into that market or into that industry. So it ends up turning into a situation where it really discourages competition in the free market. And so that's what we've got to really be careful about. We have to make sure that these groups are actually serving that legitimate purpose of protecting consumers, not using this to further uncompetitive business practices.
Empowering a kingdom instead of a fiefdom.
Absolutely.
I love this. I love. So, do other states, and then we're gonna go into another legislative idea here after we wrap this one up. Do other states have these same little good old boy clubs, or have we seen a dissolution of these things across America? Is there a trend, I guess, to get rid of these regulatory agencies? Is Louisiana still one of the last, bastion or stronghold of this kind of a organization, or are there other states that need to follow our lead?
There are other states that have taken similar steps. I will say Louisiana still has, a disproportionate number of these entities and some of these challenges. But we have been making progress over the last few years. We've been very fortunate to work with lawmakers on, instituting reforms over the last few years to really get a handle on this as it's gotten out of hand. We passed a bill working with lawmakers. They passed a few years ago a process to really get to some of these regulations. But now what we're seeing as we're really digging in is, even though there's a much better process in place now for people to challenge regulations that are burdensome, that exceed their authority in state law, all of that, what we're also seeing is that there are just as many really uncompetitive provisions in state law that need to be tackled. So we're really looking forward to working with lawmakers to not only do a really thorough scrub through the rules and regulations in our state, but even things that are in state law that have just accumulated over decades, there's a lot of that that needs to be peeled away, again, to make sure that we are giving entrepreneurs, workers, and businesses the best chance of success to compete in a free market here in Louisiana. So there's some exciting work that we hope to see moving in the upcoming session. And while we're doing that, we'll increase sunshine to give the public a greater eye and visibility into how these decisions are made. We think that's a winning recipe to really get us back on track where we need to be.
Not only sunshine, but, are you, or could that refer to having the, public checkbooks where the public can see what the, government's spending its money on? I know that we had that with our educational
Yes.
system, but is that something that we should see in every single department in Louisiana?
We certainly think so. Several years ago, the legislature passed a law providing for the Louisiana checkbook. So that's a website you can go to right now and access information about how state agencies are spending your tax dollars. You mentioned the education dashboard.
And this is
That's a
something you all
separate
worked
one.
on, and
We
this is
did.
something Pelican
We were
Institute worked
happy to
on.
support that. We also worked with lawmakers a few years after that to say, you've done a lot of great work with Louisiana checkbook, but it doesn't include educational spending. And Louisiana spends well over 4 billion with a B dollars every year to support K-12 education. Perhaps we should have a place where citizens can go to see how their local school system is using those tax dollars,
Mhm.
whether it's federal dollars, state dollars, local dollars. There needs to be visibility into how these dollars are being spent, not just in general, but in particular, how are we using dollars to drive student outcomes, to really help students? Are we spending more on administration and on central office than we are in the classroom? Are some school systems spending a lot more on transportation than others? How can we spend money on things that actually help struggling students get the help and the interventions they need? Now we have a place, it's actually housed on the treasurer's website, a portal there for K-12 education where you can go and it looks just like a checkbook ledger. You can go and see every single expenditure. You can even pull up contracts that your local school board has with different vendors and providers. More transparency than we have ever had. Already, it's led to important conversations about how dollars are being used. There have been newspaper articles written. There's actually been an audit, and there have been some investigations that have started looking into how some dollars maybe have been spent inappropriately. So again, we believe this is important for a number of reasons, to keep those government entities accountable, but also to provide the visibility and hopefully the parental involvement
Right.
that we
I
also
love
want
that.
to see. We firmly believe that when families feel like they are part of that and they are connected and they have visibility into how their dollars are being used, that's where we get parents and communities more involved in our schools across our state.
I love that as a small step to get more people involved on the education level, and hopefully that takes off, more people getting involved in other things. And before I ask you the next question, let's use that for a second, that I think that the Pelican Institute is something that more people should get involved with. I love the fact that you all are working on a lot of grassroots efforts. And I know that might sound a little bit more sounds like an advertisement or a promotion, but I'm always telling people the best thing that they can do, in their community to better their government is get out and vote. But I
Yeah.
would say the second and even third best thing to do is getting involved in grassroots organizations like the Pelican Institute, to be able to really see what y'all are working on, because you all show up at the Capitol. You all don't just say we're gonna present this policy. You all actually show up at the Capitol. You educate people. You educate lawmakers. And most of your legislation, while some people try to peg it, on a political spectrum of left or right, it really is more of a central, moderate, down the middle kind of approach to not only improving government, but improving the lives and livelihoods of families and people in those communities. And I really appreciate that. What else are you all working on? And near the end, one of the last questions is how can people get involved? But what other legislation are you working on, Aaron? I know that you're the one that really the go-to when it comes to Pelican on what policies you're working on in Baton Rouge. But I love how you're connecting this to other states. What's the next one up on the list?
Well, first of all, thank you for that commercial. We want as many people as possible to get involved. And we hope that our website and our office can be a place where people can go to learn what are the most pressing issues in our state, what are our challenges, but more importantly, what are the ideas and solutions that we can bring to our state to get us back to the point where we can have a Louisiana comeback. We can have the Louisiana that we know we can have. And that's what it's all about. This is not political. This is not about left or right or liberal or conservative. These are questions of, what are the ideas and solutions that we can put on the table that have been tried and tested? We know that they will work. They have worked in other places. What can we do to provide maximum opportunity for the people of Louisiana? That's what it's all about. We're a nonprofit organization. We exist to share these ideas, to put solutions on the table, to work through them. It's not always about copying what some other states done. It's got to work for our state. We know that. So we spend a lot of time working with lawmakers through those ideas, through those solutions. It is a process. Not everything that we come out with in terms of a proposal is the way that it looks on the end, but we're there. We're part of the conversation. We try to be there as a trusted resource, a source of information, and most importantly, people that are there that, lawmakers know that when we come and talk to them, that we're there as a resource, and we want good solutions. We want a positive outcome for the people of Louisiana. So we have not only an opportunity to do that in the upcoming session, we also have an opportunity for both lawmakers and just citizens to come and learn about these issues, to talk about them at a policy conference that we're hosting on March 3rd. We call it our Solutions Summit, where you can come and learn about all of these issues. And I know we've talked about just a few of them today. Not only fiscal issues, not only education and regulatory reform, but we also work on technology and innovation. We work on energy issues. So there are other areas across state government where we try to have a presence. We try to connect lawmakers to experts, national experts, and solutions that can really drive more positive outcomes. To give you another example, last year we worked on a package of legislation called One Door, where it's all about getting people from poverty to opportunity, from dependence to independence, by better integrating all of our safety net government assistance program and our workforce programs to make sure that we're not just helping people with short-term services in their time of need. More importantly, how do we help them long-term to connect with a great job, to have an upwardly mobile career, really find opportunity to where they don't need to rely and be trapped in a government assistance program. So these are some of the workforce related issues that we work on. All of these things are necessary. These are important things that real people in Louisiana need, but they need for their government to be able to work through these programs and deliver these services in an efficient way and in a smart way. And we know that there are great ideas, great solutions that we can put in their hands. And so we would just love the opportunity to partner with your viewers and have them join us in these conversations, join us at the Capitol, and just really get involved. It's really easy to call your lawmaker, just introduce yourself and say, hey, I'm concerned about what I'm hearing, what I'm reading in the news. What can I do to help you with this particular area? Lawmakers love it when their citizens get involved, and frankly, they need to know that their citizens are involved and what their expectations are.
Citizens involvement makes them aware that people are watching. How many organizations like that? And I'm going to wrap this up here in just a couple minutes. I say that more for the audience to know what's coming up, but how many other organizations around the country are there in other states like the Pelican Institute? Do you, I mean, I know you probably don't have an exact number, but is there one in every state, and how much are you guys working with them?
Yeah, there's one in every state. There are actually a few in some states. So we have a great network that we're regularly sharing ideas, sharing pieces of legislation, sharing research. Some groups focus on other issues. Not everybody works on healthcare or education or technology. And that's fine. Some states have different priorities or are deeper in some areas than they are in others. But we are really grateful for the networks that we have, not only across the country, but also the many partners that we work with here in our state. We try to work with business and industry. We try to work with advocacy organizations, try to work with just a number of organizations that are trying to move our state forward. We may have some differences of opinion once in a while, but we believe that where there is productive dialogue, where we are
Yeah.
all looking for the same positive outcomes for our citizens, we can really do some powerful things. And so, we certainly have that same level of excitement and commitment going into this next session. We hope that we can get some great things done for the Louisiana people. And we know that we have not only an opportunity, but an obligation to get this done. These are things that need to be done urgently if we are going to get in the game, if we are going to make our state competitive and provide maximum relief and opportunity for our people. We've got to do that with a sense of urgency.
I love the open-minded dialogue and solutions that I'm hearing, not only from you, but about the Pelican Institute, but how it reflects how you are working with other organizations around the country for good solutions for communities. I really like that. Erin, one last question is economic freedom and prosperity on the rise in Louisiana? Or did you see a point where Louisiana was at its lowest behind us and we're on the rise, or is there still a lot of work to do? What's your opinion on that overall scorecard?
I certainly believe we are on the rise, but that growth is what I would call pretty fragile right now. I mean, we're at a moment where we can take that recent growth and we can accelerate it, or we can let our foot off the gas and coast where we are, or even worse, decline again. We can't afford for that to happen. I think you had Vance Ginn on recently, who is
Yes.
our senior economic fellow. He puts together a fabulous economic report a couple of times a year. That's a great report that's on our website where people can go and just get a really recent snapshot of how are we doing. And how are we doing compared to other states? You'll see that there's a lot in there to be proud of, a lot of good growth. But again, I would say number one, we can't be satisfied. We know it's not enough. Number two, we have to keep our foot on the gas because we know that we can do better,
Mhm.
and our people need for us to do better. So that's the level of commitment that we've got to have to really make these reforms stick, to really optimize them and achieve maximum benefit for our people. And we know that we can get that work done.
I love the positive approach. I also love the teamwork, by the way. Like you said, Vance, was on my show, and he talked about the details and kind of got in the weeds a little bit on the
Yeah.
details of his experience as an economist. And then I love how he flips that information to you, and where you go to the legislative sessions and work with the actual representatives and then the people that are actively involved in our community through you, and how you all get that information out to be able to form actual legislation that puts the teeth into the numbers and the reports. I can't thank you enough for that. Erin, thank you so much. Is there any final words you want to get out there?
I'll just remind everyone to please go to pelicanpolicy.org, where you can read up and just get involved on a number of these important policy topics. And also, please plan on joining us March 3rd, downtown Baton Rouge, for our Solutions Summit. We're going to have some amazing speakers, national experts, some of our state legislative leaders join us for an exciting day that will be educational, but it'll also be a lot of fun. We'll also be celebrating the 250th birthday of the Declaration of Independence. Walter
Oh,
Isaacson will be our special guest talking about his new book, which everyone will receive a signed copy of. And we're going to use this opportunity to not only talk about a little bit of history, a little bit of opportunity, but also bringing it back to these core foundational principles of individual liberty, free markets, limited government, the things that we know have made our country great. These principles are still very much important. We need to recommit to them, and we believe that we have just some great ways that we can do that here in the near term, and we'd love for people to join us and become involved. Thank you so
I
much,
love it.
William.
Erin, thank you very much. Erin, hang on 1 second, please, while I let the audience know to please, if you want to know other people that either are interstate that want to get involved in a positive way in our state for policy in Louisiana, please contact the Pelican Institute. But most importantly, you can also catch more of the Pelican Institute at their Solutions Summit, which I will be at in March. And please join us there. And also, please share this interview with anybody that you think might want to get involved more in Louisiana. Thank you all so much and have a great day.